In the second set of notes that we're going to go over, we're still talking about the scientific method, but we're going to talk about how to set up a controlled experiment. These are the steps that I would like you to know that of the scientific method. You'll see these different on the internet and different teachers, but these are the ones I would like you to know for biology. First, we talked about this. You have to ask a question. You have to ask a scientific question. It can't be based on opinions. It needs to be testable. And then from there, you're going to make some observations. From an observation, you form a hypothesis in an if-then statement. Now we're going to talk about the controlled experiment. After you've set up this controlled experiment, you're going to record and analyze your results. You'll put your data in tables and put those in graphs. You have to draw a conclusion, and then any good science experiment, you have to repeat it to make sure the results were valid. So, when you're setting up a controlled experiment, you are going to have variables. We're going to talk about the independent and dependent variable, but a variable is just a factor that can change. The independent variable is going to be one that you change, and the dependent variable is going to be the one that changes because of the independent variable. Some examples could be the type of material you're using, the amount of material, such as like water, sunlight, the temperature, the light, the time. So here's an example of an experiment using a plant. Now, when you're looking at this plant, you could do an experiment on how the water affects growth, how the amount of sunlight affects the growth, or how fertilizer would affect the growth. But you can only choose one of those. So in your experiment, you can only change one of them for it to be a controlled experiment. So in this case, we're going to change the amount of water. Now, the amount of water is what we are changing, so that is going to be our independent variable. The independent variable is the one that is deliberately changed by the experimenter. When you're reading through your experiments today, just always ask yourself, what is the experimenter changing? What are they actually wanting to test? And then the dependent variable changes in response to that. Now this you can ask yourself, what am I actually measuring? So in this case, the plant, we are going to measure the growth. So that would be the dependent variable. The growth is going to change in response to how much water we give it. So then we have a control group. You always have to compare it to something. Right now, if you've been watching the news at all, they're doing tests on a coronavirus vaccine. And in their study, they have people they are giving the vaccine, but they also have people that they're giving what is called a placebo, and they're not giving them anything. That would be your control group. Okay? It's the one that you're actually using for comparison to see if that is actually doing anything. Then you have constants. So we said that you could change the amount of sunlight, the fertilizer, water. Okay? If you're going to be doing a controlled experiment, the only thing that we can change is water. You have to keep the amount of sunlight the same, the fertilizer the same. Any other factors have to all stay the same, and those are called constants. Now, when you're doing a controlled experiment, you're going to put these in charts and graphs to read them. Okay? You're going to put the data in a table. But it can be both quantitative and qualitative data. We're going to work a lot with the quantitative data. And then from there, you're going to draw a conclusion. You're going to look at that and decide if your hypothesis was correct from your data. And then from there, you can make some inferences. And the last thing I'd like to talk about today is a theory. A theory it unifies all of a broad range of observations. This is the point when we talk about repeat. This is why it's important. So to develop a theory, it's been done many, many times, and it's agreeing with all of the observations. Now, it's not a law, so it's not considered the absolute truth yet, and new evidence is uncovered, and it could be revised or replaced. Some examples of a theory are evolution, okay, how we've changed over time, and also the Big Bang Theory, kind of how the universe came about. All of the observations are still concluding to this, but it's still being tested to see if there can be any changes made.